I was never the kind of person to believe that something bad could happen to me. I always thought serious problems were things that happened to other people. But what I experienced that night changed everything. My name is Raphael, and to this day, when I close my eyes, I can still feel the fear of that early morning. It all started when I moved into an old apartment in the historic center of Ouro Preto. The building, with its colonial facade and worn wooden windows, was over 100 years old. The narrow, dimly lit hallways smelled of mold and aged wood, and the wide wooden floorboards creaked with every step, as if they held memories from another time. But the price was good, and I'm not one to turn down an opportunity. The initial discomfort of the peeling walls and the heavy air seemed like something I would get used to over time. The first week, strange things started happening. Late at night, I would hear noises in the hallway. Hurried, dragging footsteps like someone was struggling to walk. The sound of doors opening and closing made me think that maybe I had a night owl neighbor on my floor. But whenever I opened the door to check, the hallway was empty, with only the weak, flickering light casting strange shadows on the walls. I asked the doorman, Anibal, an elderly man, and he assured me with a serious expression that no other apartment on my floor was occupied. I laughed, skeptical, thinking he must have been mistaken or just trying to scare me. By the second week, things got worse. I started noticing that someone had been messing with my door. Small scratches near the lock, like someone had tried to force their way in. And my doormat was often out of place. Fear started creeping in, but I tried to stay calm. I thought about installing an extra lock, but Anibal insisted the building was safe, though his eyes avoided mine when he said it. It was on a rainy Friday that everything spiraled out of control. The whole day had felt off. The sky was dark, and a cold wind seemed to cut through the apartment walls. I was working late, sitting at my desk facing the window that overlooked a dark alley. The sound of the rain tapping against the glass almost made me ignore the sharp crack that came from the living room. Like something heavy had fallen. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. When I reached the living room, the window was open, slamming against the wind. I was sure I had closed it. A cold chill ran down my spine. Then, in the reflection of the glass, I saw it, the shadow of someone standing in the hallway. Fear consumed me, but I tried to stay calm. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but there was no signal. I rushed back to my bedroom and locked the door, trying to think of what to do. That's when I heard it, the slow creak of my front door opening. The footsteps were careful, deliberate. Someone was inside my apartment. I ran to my bedroom window, but I lived on the 4th floor. Jumping would be fatal. With every approaching step, my panic grew. Then I heard the doorknob rattling. Whoever was out there was trying to force their way in. The sound of wood being scratched, the faint creak of the lock giving way. I banged on the window, screamed for help, but the street below was empty, silent, as if the world had come to a stop. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then suddenly the noise stopped. Only the sound of my own heavy breathing filled the room. I waited before finally gathering the courage to open the door. When I did, I found the front door slightly open, and my apartment ransacked. The intruder had taken my laptop and wallet. But the worst part was the feeling of vulnerability. Knowing that someone had been there, so close, was terrifying. I decided to spend the night at a friend's place. The next day, I went back just to grab my things. I couldn't stay another minute in that apartment. When I told Sewanibal what had happened, he mumbled something about recent break-ins in the area, but said no one had ever managed to get inside the building. There was something in his eyes, a shadow of knowing, that made me doubt him. Before I left, a neighbor from the floor above, Luis, stopped me on the stairs. He had a tired, almost paranoid look. He told me I wasn't the first person to go through this in that apartment. He said that years ago, a young man disappeared there, leaving the apartment exactly as I had found it that night, ransacked with signs of a break-in, but nothing conclusive. Since then, anyone who moved into that apartment never stayed long. That stuck with me. It seemed like a simple burglary, but what if it wasn't? I started looking into the disappearance of that young man, Daniel. I found out he was an architecture student, obsessed with a possible hidden room in that building. Something inside me wanted to believe it was just paranoia, but something even stronger pushed me to find the truth. I went back to the building. I needed to put an end to this once and for all. The hallway felt even darker, and the smell of old wood was stronger than ever. I stepped inside the apartment, guided by a morbid curiosity. I searched every corner until I found it. A small opening behind a built-in cabinet. It was the hidden room. The space was small, windowless, with walls covered in scratches, as if someone had desperately tried to get out. In the center, there was a table with scattered papers and drawings. Among them, a notebook with the name Daniel on the cover. The last pages were scribbled, almost unreadable, but one sentence stood out. "They won't let me leave." That's when I heard it. A sharp click. The door to the room had shut behind me. I ran to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic flooded my body. I started yelling, pounding on the walls, but the sound seemed to die right there, muffled. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. The shadows began to shift around me, taking shape, and in the corner of the room I saw his face. Daniel. But it wasn't a human face. It was twisted, his eyes empty, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. He hadn't disappeared. He had been here all along. And now, so was I. The next day, the apartment was rented out again. The new tenant, just like me, would never believe that something bad could happen to him.